You're listening to the 2011 Singapore Grand Prix podcast. To keep up to date with the latest Formula 1 news, visit www.formula1fancast.com, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Formula 1 FanCast. Well, he wasn't able to do it in Singapore, but we might as well say congratulations to Sebastian Vettel on winning a second driver's title. Vettel now only needs a point from the remaining 5 races to be crowned world champion after the German took his 9th win the season at the Singapore Grand Prix. Jenson Button also put in a strong performance to finish second, and Mark Webber came home in third. And here with me to review the Grand Prix is Will Vincent, as always. How you, Will?
Hey, how you doing?
Not too bad. Pole position, a race win, another memorable weekend for Seb, and without doubt, Vettel is in a totally different league to all the other drivers.
Completely. And, I mean, we could have said congratulations to Seb, as far back as someone like Silverstone, but, formalities are formalities. He's got to get, 1 point in 5 races, which will be... If he doesn't do that, then it's going to be the greatest upset in the history of Formula 1. Let's put it simply as that. And, you know what, I think he's in such a different league right now that he could break a leg, literally, and still gets a top 10 finish. So, yeah, well done, Seb, essentially. It's weird. It's like everyone keeps on going on about, Seb, the new Michael Schumacher, but I think he's actually doing better than Schumacher did at his point in his career right now, because he's done a lot, but he's dominated a lot more than Schumacher did in '95, and yeah, good job.
And you went back against Vettel guiding Kinky Kylie to race victory at Suzuka.
Yeah, especially being Suzuka, a track that Red Bull will love. It suits that Red Bull car so well. He likes the track as well, and yeah, Kinky Kylie, be it wet, be it dry, it's going to be an easy race for him as far as I'm concerned. Even if it's wet, I still think that he'll get a point at least.
And he had a pretty scary moment, didn't he, when Jarno Trulli was released into his path in the pit lane, but nonetheless, Seb had the race under control.
Well, yeah, and that's where it makes the difference. The fact that he knew that Trulli was going to come out side by side of him. This isn't some junior Formula A. There's rules and procedures when it comes to pit exit and stuff like that. And the Lotus guys, it's the leader. It's not as if they're racing him for position. They could have at least waited 0.5 of a second or something like that. But, again, kept it under control, did what he had to do. Even at the end of the race, when Button was in brackets catching him, I think he could have put the foot down if he had to. It wasn't going to be a Canada all over again.
Mark Webber had a better weekend after the Australian finished Sunday's race third. Even though he made another poor start, Webber remains winless in 2011, but it wasn't a bad weekend for Mark, and he certainly had some entertaining battles with Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, a better showing for Webber. It's very easy to say that car was designed for one person and one person only, but Adrian Newey is such a genius that he could easily design a car for Webber to get P2 or fight for a win every single race. It just seems to be that he doesn't have the right mindset to do so. His starts have been appalling for so long. I don't know what his issue is with that. I'm sure he could actually do better if he had no double clutch, none of this engine management sort of stuff, and actually just pushed the car.
But on the positive, putting a good lap in qualifying to put the car in the front row.
Well, yeah, it was a good effort. It was an interesting qualifying for him. He did what he had to do, and he was keeping people behind him. Had he finished second, we would have been having a bit more of a party in Singapore than we're having right now.
And I'm sure many of us would love to see Webber win a race before the end of the season.
Well, yeah, I'm going to go back to 1995, and when Schumacher had his tremendous year, even the number 2 guy, Johnny Herbert, scored a win. So it's a team's dominance always has to be measured by both of their drivers. And whenever Ferrari have been dominating, they've always had their number 2 car there or thereabouts close enough. Red Bull have dominated the top stop of the podium, but they haven't been able to dominate the other 2 steps. I think it's time that Horner really starts having a look at how to increase that dominance of Red Bull, because it will get to a point, if it's just Vettel winning races or contending for races and Webber continues not to be there, there's less points being taken away, and that means that 1 or 2 slip-ups will hurt Vettel a lot more.
Okay, so are you suggesting that Red Bull should get rid of Webber?
Yeah, Simple as that. He's, been with the team since they began. He was obviously at Jaguar Racing, so it's not as if he's... he can't complain about the fact that he's not gelled in the team. He can't complain about the fact he's not comfortable in the team. It's just got to that point where, simply put, he's not fast enough. It's like, you could put so many different people in that second Red Bull, and I'd have the pace to, once in a while, beat Vettel for wins. But it's not happening. Whether, if he survives into 2013, Horner's made a mistake.
Well, coming on to McLaren now, and Jenson Button put in a fine performance to finish the race second. Will, great job from Button, and his final stint on the Supersoft saw him end the race only a second behind Vettel.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, I mean, it's not fully Button catching Vettel. I mean, obviously Vettel had issues with traffic he was having to get past, stuff like that. There was a huge fight going on right in front of him as he came into the final lap. It was a good race for him, and he's showing that when you put the two McLarens to do their stuff, Hamilton can drive aggressively, but can't drive very well when he's not being aggressive. Button can drive well when he has to use his head, but can also be really good when he has to be aggressive. So it's more and more showing that Button's the more rounded driver at McLaren, and therefore, technically, could almost be their number one driver, which must mean that in the off-season, Hamilton's going to have to do a lot of thinking.
And Jenson always seems to excel at street race circuits, doesn't he?
Well, yeah. Street race circuits, wet races, when you're at your comfort zone, you have to nail everything. I mean, a mistake at Singapore puts you in the wall. Same way a mistake at Monaco puts you in the wall, or a mistake at a wet race puts you into the wall. So when you have to put everything on the line, he knows how to get that extra bit out of the car that other people hold back off because they're too conservative.
And just finally on Jenson, do you think we're starting to see the best of Button in the McLaren?
I think next year we're going to see the best of Button in McLaren, but this is a very nice sneak preview. Next year, Button is going to be a dream to watch in that car, unless the internal team politics start and they had the whole debate over who to make the car better suited towards at the start of the year, and Button will have to play catch up. But if they do it the right way and make a neutral car and let them find the advantage between them, Button's going to take Hamilton down next year.
As for Lewis Hamilton, he had yet another eventful race, and another race where he was handed a drive-through by the stewards. Deserved penalty, or was it harsh?
Well, you see, when I see stuff like this, I always think back to, okay, was it your first incident? If it was your first incident, it would have been harsh. But we're seeing Lewis go to the stewards every single race, and it's getting a little bit boring now. He could fit in very well into an IndyCar road race where they were like crashing into each other. He'll get along fine, he'll blend in. But even in Formula 1, there's not that many crashes at the minute. If you think back, there's probably, one or two crashes a race. Everyone's finishing, surviving, and he's the one guy that always seems to not. And the other guys that seem not to finish a race are collected by him or stuff like that. I mean, he just needs to calm down. That move, on paper, yeah, it might have been a bit harsh, that penalty, but after everything that he's done this season, I think that overall it was deserved.
Well, it was another frustrating race for Lewis again, but did well to recover to finish fifth.
Yeah, he did. But there comes a while when you stop thinking about what ifs and you just have to start looking at a driver's performance. And if I'm going to be completely honest, his performance this year has been lacklustre. And the reason why is because he's made more mistakes than everyone else. And everyone keeps on going on about driver world champions make less mistakes than anyone else. Which means when they have a bad weekend, it's a bad weekend when they finish fourth instead of finishing out the points in the wall.
Well, 2011 so far will probably be remembered as a year of frustration and disappointment for Lewis, but let's make no mistake, 2012 is going to be a really big year for Lewis.
It's going to be a really interesting year for Lewis. We've already talked about how Button's getting towards that peak of his game, and Lewis has got two options. Either he steps up and finds a way to blow Button out of the water week in, week out, or he gets even more aggressive, gets even more frustrated, ends up in the wall even more, and he might as well not turn up to some races.
Well, he might have won in Singapore in 2008 and last year, but Ferrari's Fernando Alonso never really had the pace to challenge for the race win, and fourth was the best result Alonso and Ferrari could have wished for.
Yeah, and they gave Webber a good showing here and there, but let's be honest, once you're in front of another car, even at this track, it was very difficult to overtake. the DRS zone, you have to put it on in such a way that you don't run over them going into a corner, but then get it so that you can pull out coming out of the corner and down that tiny little backstretch before the next one. So, yeah, it's a good result for Alonso. And you know what? He's doing what you should do when you realise that you haven't got a chance to win a championship. Consolidate, get good results in, get your mindset right, prepare for next year. Get yourself a good launch pad for next year. And that's what he's doing, same as Button is. And he's doing it the right way. And he's keeping himself out of trouble, but still having fun in races at the same time.
And not for the first time this season, he makes a good start to the race, getting past Hamilton and Webber.
Yeah. I think that Webber would pay a lot of money to find out what Ferrari are doing at the start of the races. Same with Mercedes at times. But, yeah, it's a good start to the race. It was this whole thing, it didn't end up being a trolley train, so it wasn't as if he didn't have any pace. It was just slightly less than what the Red Bull had.
Well, Fernando couldn't really get close to Vettel for the race win, but Fernando's still capable of winning at least one race before the end of the season, isn't he?
Yeah, and I'm going to place a bet on that being at Korea.
Where he won last year, of course.
Yeah.
It's fair to say Felipe Massa was not a happy bunny at the end of the race. The Brazilian was only able to finish 9th and suffered the puncture on lap 12 after being hit by Lewis Hamilton. Will Massa certainly vented his anger out on the Brit in a sarcastic manner in the media area.
Yeah, and you know, it's nice once in a while to see a driver get angry, but do it in such a way that makes you laugh while understanding their point. There was no special treatment claims or anything else. It was just a case of, well, this is what happened, and this shouldn't be happening. I mean, it was until then a good drive from Massa. Not the best of drives, but a good drive. Again, this is someone who really wants to consolidate his season now. Make sure he gets to Brazil with at least a half chance of winning. Let himself finish the season, you know, seeing how many points he can get, seeing if he can make up any more ground. But I think Massa's in exactly the same position as Hamilton's in, but with a slightly less degree, because you can be a number 2 at Ferrari and still be loved, because, you know, they always have a number 1 driver and a number 2 driver. And I think it's a point in his career now where he realises he's just going to be another Rubens Barrichello and another Eddie Irvine. But at the same time, he's a better driver than Rubens Barrichello and Eddie Irvine ever was, and can challenge Alonso quite a lot. So for him, it's a case of seeing what he can get out of this year, and seeing where he is next year, and seeing how much of a challenge he can make, not only to his teammate, but to the rest of the field.
Okay, well, Sebastian Vettel is the obvious choice for driver of the day, but Force India's Paul Di Resta put in a stunning drive to finish 6th, with teammate Adrian Sutil coming home in 8th. Double points finish for the team, but Will, what a fantastic drive from Di Resta.
Yeah, Di Resta, you know what, I would very happily chuck Webber out that car and give Di Resta that seat tomorrow if I felt that he wouldn't buckle under pressure. But great drive, great maturity, and you know what, this is what Force India needs, and this is why Force India is doing so well this season. They've got 2 drivers who are good, solid drivers. They occasionally get tangled up in other people's messes, but they don't cause the mess themselves. Scoring a double points finish in Formula 1 is always a good thing. For a team with the budget of Force India, it's even better. Let's not forget, a position higher in the championship is worth a lot of money. So you're going to want to get that, because, you know, that gives you more development money for the following year. So it all counts in that midfield, and Force India really are showing themselves to be one of the best midfield teams at the minute. At this point in the season, I'd even put them ahead of the likes of Renault, Mercedes, you know, just because of the fact that they've got that passion and they can somehow be consistently good but not great each week, but good is good enough at times.
And considering it was his first race at Singapore and he lost a lot of time in free practice too, Di Resta did an equally impressive job in the race.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a track where you need track time. I mean, obviously he's been in the simulator, checking out, but there's nothing that can prepare you not only for a new track, but this is a new track under the lights and a different time to any other race. You're waking up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you're going to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning and stuff like that. So time wise, it's, you know, that was a difficult issue. You know, racing under the lights, you can't simulate that in a simulator. You've got to get out there and feel how, you know, the wind, and that's different in different track conditions, stuff like that.
And let's not forget that Sutil did a great job for the team as well.
Well, yeah, Sutil's a good driver, and he's always been a consistent driver. And again, consistency is what you need if you're a midfield team to be better than the rest, not getting tangled up in everyone else's mess and just running your own race.
Well, Nico Rosberg finished 7th for Mercedes, just ahead of Vettel, Massa and Sergio Perez. Mercedes, you'd have to say by now, have established themselves as the 4th best team in Formula 1, but lucky escape for Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, that was a scary crash for Schumacher. Reminiscent slightly of Valencia and Webber, but slightly less painful. It looked more dramatic because it was night time, you could see sparks all over TV. But it was still a scary, scary impact, and you never want to have a situation where you clip a car and your wing goes underneath your car because you can't steer, you can barely brake, and the only thing you can do is just brace yourself for a wall impact. But yeah, good result for Nico. Shame for Schumacher, but at the same time he was a little bit over-aggressive. But overall, good result for Mercedes. You know, I wouldn't say they're the 4th best team in Formula 1, but they've got some form of claim to that.
But since Canada, we've seen a bit of renaissance in Michael Schumacher's form, haven't we?
Well, yeah. Schumacher racing well means he hits the wall once in a while. Let's not forget that. So, yeah, at least, you know, he's still got the fight. He's not doing a Mika Hakkinen where he's just driving around to get whatever comes to him.
Well, Sergio Perez rounded off the top 10 as the Mexican picked up the final points. Sauber had a decent first half to the season, but so far have struggled in the second half, despite Perez finishing 10th in Singapore. And qualifying didn't exactly go to plan for Kamui Kobayashi, but will no doubt Kobayashi will be fired up for his home race in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah. And to touch on the first point first, Sauber never do well at the end of the season. And that, I think, comes down to how much money is plugged into Formula 1 during the season. Sauber seem to be very good at getting a lot done on a limited budget at the start, but they can't keep up the massive development that the likes of Mercedes, Renault, Ferrari, Red Bull, McLaren seem to have. And it poses the question, well, why do you have to develop a car all the way through the season? Why can't you just say, okay, this is our front wing that we are presenting for this season. This is our rear wing that we're presenting for this season. This is our side pods and this, that and the other. I think it's ridiculous how you can put a car from, like, you can pick any Red Bull, and if you watch Formula 1 enough, you can probably tell what race it was from, just because it looks so different to the one before and the one after it. I think that's slightly disgusting, how much money is still being pumped in despite the budget caps that are going on.
And a quick mention for Williams as well. Pastor Maldonado just missed out on the points, finishing 11th. But the big news surrounding the team came about last week with Kimi Raikkonen being linked with a return to Formula 1 with Williams and replacing Barrichello. Will, your thoughts on this?
Not going to happen. Williams can't afford to pay Raikkonen, let's be honest about that. And if they can't afford to pay Raikkonen, either they've got a magical new sponsor or they're going to build their car at a budget of £12.50. Because that guy's not going to come back to Formula 1 without a ton of money. They need to get some front wings ready for him, so that will take another few million away. I don't know. Kimi Raikkonen, does he really want to come back to Formula 1 that much that he'll go to a mid to low grid team? That's my first question. After he's raced for, Ferrari and McLaren. Don't think it will happen. I see the link to Renault a lot more than I see the link to Williams, to be fair. But at the same time, there's other avenues that Raikkonen has and can explore. Let's not forget he raced in a NASCAR truck race and a NASCAR Nationwide Series race, and him and Kyle Busch are good friends, so I think that he's using this link to Formula 1 to try and get him a seat elsewhere. I won't be surprised if I see him in a NASCAR Nationwide Series race a bit more often next year, or in an Indy car, but he won't be in Formula 1.
And just finally, Team Lotus' Heikki Kovalainen. Congratulations to him for finishing the race 16th ahead. Renault's Vitaly Petrov, and Renault did have issues with downforce throughout the whole weekend, but still, for Heikki to finish ahead of Petrov, that's an achievement in itself, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Renault, again, it's another consolidation year for them. They'll be back, they'll be stronger. Bruno Senna's got so much interest in that team, and if Raikkonen does decide to come back and go to Renault, then you know what? Yeah, they'll get a bit more interest. But yeah, good job for Lotus. I think I could very happily get rid of Virgin and HRT and keep Lotus and not have too much of an issue, to be fair. and Lotus are the only team out of the three that's actually tried to make some form of any development, and it shows because they're whooping the other two's backsides every week.
Well, thank you very much for coming in to review the Singapore Grand Prix. You can visit Formula1FanCast.com to keep up to date with the latest Formula 1 news, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Formula1 FanCast. From me and Will, cheerio.
Bye.